The February sun hung low over San Antonio, Texas, casting long shadows across the worn pavement of Roosevelt Avenue. Jake Morrison stood in the doorway of his newly leased garage, a modest 1,200-square-foot space wedged between a laundromat and a Mexican bakery that filled the air with the sweet scent of pan dulce every morning. The hand-painted sign above the roll-up door read, "Morrison's Auto Repair," in simple black letters. Nothing fancy, nothing flashy. Just like Jake wanted it. At 42 years old, Jake had the kind of weathered face that told stories without words. Deep lines etched around his eyes spoke of sleepless nights and hard-earned wisdom. His sandy brown hair, now streaked with premature gray, was cut military short, a habit from his Marine Corps days that he'd never quite shaken. He wore his standard uniform, a faded navy t-shirt, oil-stained jeans, and steel-toed boots. The right boot was custom-made to accommodate his prosthetic leg, a constant reminder of an IED explosion outside Kandahar 7 years ago that had taken his leg below the knee and, in many ways, the life he'd known before. Jake ran his calloused hand along the doorframe, feeling the rough texture of the metal. This place represented everything he'd worked for since coming home. Every double shift at Peterson's Auto Body, every weekend side job, every birthday and Christmas where he'd chosen to save instead of spend. The lease agreement sat in his back pocket, signed just 3 days ago. The grand opening was scheduled for Saturday, 4 days away. "Looking good, Morrison," called out Raymond Chen, the 60-year-old owner of Chen's laundromat next door. Raymond had emigrated from Taiwan 40 years ago and spoke English with a melodic accent that Jake found comforting. "You ready for the big day?" Jake offered a small smile and a wave. "Keeping it simple, Raymond. Just a few people, some coffee, and donuts. Nothing crazy." Raymond laughed, shaking his head as he carried a basket of clean linens into his shop. Humble as always. "You should celebrate big. You earned it." But Jake didn't feel like celebrating big. He never did. The prosthetic leg made him self-conscious in crowds, and large gatherings reminded him too much of the military ceremonies he'd endured, the Medal of Honor presentation, the discharge proceedings, the sympathetic looks from people who saw the missing limb before they saw the man. He'd learned to prefer the quiet, the solitary, the unremarkable. Inside the garage, the space was organized with military precision. 4 hydraulic lifts stood ready, their chrome surfaces gleaming under the fluorescent lights Jake had installed himself. Red tool chests lined the back wall, each drawer labeled in his careful handwriting. Sockets, wrenches, specialty tools. A small office occupied the corner, just big enough for a desk, a filing cabinet, and a mini-fridge. On the desk sat a vintage radio, perpetually tuned to Kaja 97. 3. San Antonio's classic country station. The radio crackled to life as Jake flipped the switch, and George Strait's smooth voice filled the garage, singing "Amarillo by Morning." Jake paused, closing his eyes for a moment. George Strait had been there for every important moment of his life. Playing in his father's truck during childhood fishing trips, streaming through earbuds during midnight patrols in Afghanistan, providing background comfort during the agonizing physical therapy sessions after the amputation. There was something about Strait's understated authenticity, his refusal to chase trends or put on airs, that resonated deeply with Jake. Amarillo by Morning, up from San Antone? Jake sang along under his breath as he organized a shipment of oil filters that had arrived that morning. His voice was gravelly but on-key, another remnant from his past, when he'd played guitar at local bars during his 20s. Before the Marines, before everything changed. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out to see a text from his daughter, Lily. "Mom says I don't have to come Saturday if I don't want to. Just FYI." Jake's jaw tightened. He read the message 3 times, each reading driving the knife a little deeper. Lily was 16 now, living with his ex-wife, Rebecca Morrison Callahan, and her new husband, David Callahan, in a nice suburban home on the north side of town. Jake saw Lily maybe once a month. Awkward dinners where conversation died in minutes, replaced by the glow of her phone screen, and his desperate attempts to find common ground with a daughter who'd essentially grown up without him. He typed back, "I'd really like you to be there. It means a lot to me." The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, maybe? We'll see. Jake pocketed the phone and returned to his work, pushing down the familiar ache of parental failure. He'd been a good soldier, a decorated Marine who'd led his squad through some of the most dangerous territory in Helmand Province. But fatherhood? Marriage? Those were battles he'd lost spectacularly. The divorce had been finalized 5 years ago, just 18 months after he'd returned from Afghanistan. Rebecca had tried, God knows she'd tried, to adjust to life with a husband who woke up screaming from nightmares, who couldn't handle crowds, who'd retreated so far into himself that he'd become a stranger in his own home. The prosthetic leg wasn't the problem. It was everything the leg represented. The trauma, the survivor's guilt, the 1,000-yard stare that wouldn't leave his eyes. "I can't keep fighting for someone who won't fight for himself," Rebecca had said through tears the day she'd asked for the divorce. And Jake, believing she deserved better, hadn't fought it. The bell above the garage door chimed as someone entered. Jake looked up to see Daniel Tucker, a tall African-American man in his mid-30s wearing a FedEx uniform. Daniel had been one of Jake's first customers when Jake was still doing side work out of his apartment complex parking lot 3 years ago. "Jake! Man, this place looks incredible," Daniel said, his face breaking into a wide grin. He walked with a slight limp, a torn ACL from his college basketball days that had never quite healed right. "Thanks, Danny. Just trying to get everything ready for Saturday." "Saturday? Yeah, about that. Angela and I are definitely coming. The kids, too. Little Dante keeps talking about Mr. Jake's new shop. You're like a celebrity to him." Jake felt warmth spread through his chest. He'd fixed Daniel's delivery van for half price when money was tight. Had let him pay in installments with no interest. It wasn't charity. Jake just understood what it meant to struggle. You don't have to bring the whole family. It's really not a big deal. Not a big deal? Jake, you've been talking about this for 2 years. This is huge, man. We're coming, and that's final. Daniel pulled an envelope from his bag. Speaking of which, Angela made you something. Inside the envelope was a handmade card decorated with crayons and stickers. "Congratulations, Mr. Jake." It read in a child's handwriting, with a drawing of what appeared to be a garage with a smiling stick figure inside. At the bottom, in neater Kerr's writing, "Thank you for always helping our family. We're so proud of you." The Tucker family. Jake had to turn away for a moment, blinking hard. "Tell Angela and the kids I said thanks." "Will do. Hey, I gotta finish my route, but I'll see you Saturday. And Jake, you deserve this, brother. Don't forget that." After Daniel left, Jake sat in the office chair and stared at the card. The simple kindness of it. The time and effort Angela and the kids had put into celebrating his small victory touched something in him that had been frozen for years. He placed the card on the desk where he could see it. The afternoon passed in a blur of inventory checks and final preparations. Jake installed a water cooler in the corner, arranged a few folding chairs for Saturday's guests, and made a list of supplies he'd need. Donuts from Shipley's, a case of bottled water, coffee from the local H-E-B grocery store. He estimated maybe 15 people would show up. Daniel's family, Raymond from next door, a handful of former customers, maybe old Hank Patterson, the retired mechanic who'd mentored Jake when he first started learning the trade. As the sun began to set, painting the Texas sky in shades of orange and pink, Jake locked up the garage and limped to his truck, a 2008 Ford F-150 with 180,000 miles that he maintained meticulously. The drive to his apartment took 20 minutes through evening traffic, past the Alamo, through the historic downtown district, and into a modest neighborhood of two-story apartment complexes. His apartment was on the second floor, a one-bedroom unit that was clean but sparse. The furniture was second-hand but well-maintained. A couch from Goodwill, a kitchen table from an estate sale, a bed frame he'd built himself. The walls were mostly bare except for two items: a framed photo of Lily from her 10th birthday, back when she'd still looked at him with adoration instead of polite distance, and his Marine Corps certificate of discharge. Jake heated up leftover tacos from the Mexican place down the street and ate them standing at the kitchen counter, staring out the window at the parking lot below. A couple argued near the dumpsters. A group of teenagers played basketball on the cracked court. Normal people living normal lives. His phone rang. The caller ID showed Rebecca. "Hey," he answered. "Hi, Jake. I got your text about Saturday." Rebecca's voice was measured, careful, the tone she always used with him now, like he was fragile glass that might shatter. "Yeah, I was hoping Lily could make it." "Jake, you know she's going through a lot right now. Junior year is stressful, and she's got SAT prep, and, Rebecca, it's 2 hours on a Saturday afternoon. I'm not asking for a week in Cancun." Silence on the other end. Then, "You're right. I'm sorry. I'll talk to her again. I can't make her go, but I'll encourage it. That's all I'm asking." Another pause. "How are you doing?" "Really?" It was a question Rebecca asked sometimes, and Jake never knew how to answer honestly. How was he doing? He'd stopped having nightmares every night. Now it was just 3 or 4 times a week. He could mostly handle crowds, as long as they weren't too loud. The phantom pain in his missing leg had decreased from constant to occasional. He'd built a business from nothing, which was something, but he still felt like he was living half a life, going through motions without truly connecting. "I'm good," he said. "Really good. This garage, it's everything I've been working toward. I'm proud of you, Jake. I really am. I know things between us didn't work out, but I do want you to be happy." "Thanks, Beck. That means something." After they hung up, Jake showered and got ready for bed. The nighttime routine was ritualized. Check that the doors are locked, check the windows, set the prosthetic leg on its stand beside the bed, set 2 alarms because one might fail. He lay in the darkness, hands behind his head, staring at the ceiling fan, making lazy circles above him. 4 more days until the opening. 4 more days until this new chapter officially began. He allowed himself a moment of cautious optimism. Maybe things were finally looking up. Maybe this garage would give him purpose beyond just survival. Maybe Lily would come, and they'd have a moment. Just one genuine moment of connection. George Strait's voice echoed in his memory. "I ain't rich, but Lord, I'm free." Jake closed his eyes and, for once, fell asleep without dreading the dreams that might come. Wednesday morning arrived with unseasonable warmth, the kind of February day that reminded San Antonio residents why they tolerated the scorching summers. Jake arrived at Morrison's Auto Repair at 6:30, unlocking the garage door as the city slowly woke around him. The bakery next door was already filling the street with the aroma of fresh bolillos and conchas, and he could hear Raymond starting up the washing machines next door. The rhythmic sound of water and machinery that would become the soundtrack of Jake's workdays. His first official job wasn't scheduled until the following week, but Jake wanted to spend these last few days making sure everything was perfect. He'd learned in the Marines that proper preparation prevented poor performance. The 5 Ps that had been drilled into his head during basic training at Paris Island. He was reorganizing the specialty tools when the bell chimed. A woman in her late 50s stood in the doorway, wearing nurse's scrubs decorated with cartoon characters. Her face broke into a warm smile when she saw him. "Jake Morrison! I heard through the grapevine you were opening up your own place." It took Jake a moment to place her. Then recognition clicked. "Mrs. Whitaker? Patricia Whitaker? The one and only. Though please call me Patricia. Mrs. Whitaker makes me feel ancient." She walked into the garage, looking around with approval. "This is wonderful, Jake. Just wonderful." Patricia Whitaker had been one of Jake's nurses at the San Antonio Military Medical Center during his rehabilitation after the amputation. She'd worked the night shift, the hardest hours when pain and despair hit wounded soldiers the hardest. Jake remembered her sitting with him at 3 in the morning when phantom pain made sleep impossible, talking about nothing and everything. Her grandchildren, her garden, her love of terrible reality TV shows. She'd treated him like a person, not a patient, and that had made all the difference. "What brings you by?" Jake asked, genuinely pleased to see her. "Well, I heard you're having a grand opening on Saturday, and I wanted to come by early to give you this." She handed him a small potted cactus with a yellow flower blooming on top. "For your office, low maintenance, hard to kill, kind of like you Marines." Jake laughed, a genuine sound that surprised him. "That's perfect. Thank you, Patricia. You coming Saturday?" "Wouldn't miss it. I'm bringing my husband, Carl. Fair warning, he'll probably talk your ear off about his Mustang. He's been looking for a good mechanic since our regular guy retired." She paused, her expression turning more serious. "Jake, I'm really proud of you. Do you know that? A lot of the guys I took care of, they struggled to find their footing after. But you did it. You built something." Jake set the cactus down carefully, throat tight. "I had good people helping me along the way. People like you. We all need people, honey. Nobody makes it alone." She checked her watch. "I've got to get to the hospital, but I'll see you Saturday. And Jake, let people celebrate you. I know it makes you uncomfortable, but you've earned it." After she left, Jake placed the cactus on his desk next to the Tucker family's card. 2 gifts in 2 days. The quiet opening he'd planned was starting to feel less lonely. The morning passed with small tasks, calibrating the alignment machine, testing the diagnostic computer, organizing paperwork. Around 11, Jake decided to make a run to Shipley's Donuts to confirm his order for Saturday. The shop was a 15-minute drive, located in a strip mall on the south side. Behind the counter was Melissa Rodriguez, a woman in her early 40s with streaks of purple in her black hair and a tattoo of roses running down her left arm. Jake had met her 2 years ago under less than ideal circumstances. "Jake! Haven't seen you in a while." Melissa greeted him warmly. "Been busy with the new shop. Actually, that's why I'm here. I've got an order for Saturday. 6 dozen assorted donuts for my grand opening." Melissa pulled up the order on her computer. "Yep, I've got you down. We'll have them ready by 7 a.m. Saturday." She paused, then added, "You know what? Consider it a gift, no charge." "Melissa, no, I can't let you." "Jake Morrison, don't you dare argue with me." Her voice was firm but kind. "You remember what you did for my son?" Jake did remember. 2 years ago, he'd been getting coffee at this same Shipley's when he'd noticed Melissa crying in the parking lot. Her car wouldn't start, and she'd just found out her son, Vincent, needed emergency dental surgery that her insurance wouldn't fully cover. She'd been trying to figure out how to get to the hospital while also worrying about the $2,500 she didn't have. Jake had fixed her car right there in the parking lot, a simple alternator issue. And when she'd asked what she owed him, he'd said, "Pay it forward when you can." He'd also, anonymously, sent $1,500 to the hospital, with instructions to apply it to Vincent Rodriguez's dental bill. He'd never told Melissa about the money. He just wanted to help. "That was nothing," Jake said. "It was everything to me. Vincent's 17 now, about to graduate, and his teeth are perfect." "You did that, Jake. So yes, the donuts are free, and I don't want to hear another word about it." Jake knew when he was beaten. "Thank you, Melissa. That's really generous. That's what community is, honey. We take care of each other." She leaned on the counter, studying him. "This opening is going to be bigger than you think, you know. Word spreads in this town. People remember kindness." Jake left Shipley's with a strange feeling in his chest. It wasn't quite discomfort, but it wasn't entirely comfortable either. This sensation of being seen, of having his quiet good deeds noticed and remembered. He'd never done those things for recognition. He'd done them because they felt right, because he understood struggle, because he'd been helped when he needed it most. The afternoon brought more visitors to the garage. Antonio Gutierrez, whose daughter's quinceañera Jake had donated his mechanical services to, ensuring all the family's cars were running perfectly for the big day. Linda Hayes, an elderly woman whose pension didn't stretch far enough, and who Jake had charged only for parts, never labor. Brandon Cole, a young veteran who Jake had mentored, teaching him basic auto repair so he could save money on maintenance. Each visitor brought good wishes for Saturday. Each one expressed gratitude for past kindnesses. Each one chipped away at Jake's vision of a quiet, unnoticed opening. By Thursday afternoon, Jake was starting to realize that his small gathering might be larger than anticipated. He'd mentally revised his estimate from 15 people to maybe 30. He ordered more donuts, more coffee, more bottled water. Thursday evening, Jake sat in his apartment, looking at his phone. He'd texted Lily earlier, asking if she'd decided about Saturday. No response. He wanted to text again, but didn't want to seem desperate or pushy. The delicate dance of separated fatherhood. How to show you care without being overbearing. How to stay present without being intrusive. Instead, he called Hank Patterson, his old mentor. Hank was 73 now, fully retired, spending his days fishing and working in his wood shop. But he'd been the one who taught Jake that working with your hands was honorable, that fixing things was a worthy calling. "Jake, my boy, how's the new shop?" Hank's voice was gravelly from 50 years of cigarettes, though he'd quit a decade ago. "Good, Hank. Real good. You still coming Saturday? Wild horses couldn't keep me away. I'm bringing Barbara, and we're coming early to help set up. You don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. You're like a son to me, Jake. Let me help." After hanging up, Jake felt the weight of connection, of people who cared, of a community he'd accidentally built while thinking he was invisible. He didn't know, couldn't have known, that other threads were already weaving together, that his story had already spread further than he imagined. That same Thursday evening, across town in a comfortable suburban home, Daniel Tucker sat at his dinner table with his wife, Angela, and their 2 children. Dante, age 7, was telling an animated story about school, while his older sister, Jasmine, age 10, tried to get a word in edgewise. "So I told Connor that Mr. Jake is the best mechanic in the whole world, and Connor said his dad goes to Precision Auto. But I said Mr. Jake is better because he fixed Daddy's van when we didn't have money, and he was really nice about it," Dante announced proudly. Angela smiled at her husband. "You talk about Jake a lot. The kids think he's a superhero. You're fa-fa-fa-fa-fa." "He kind of is," Daniel said seriously. "That first year I was on the FedEx route, when money was so tight, Jake could have charged me full price, could have demanded payment up front like most shops do. Instead, he trusted me. Let me pay $50 a week until the bill was settled. No interest, no pressure. Most people don't do that. We should do something special for his opening, Angela said thoughtfully. Like what? I don't know. But he's doing something so big, opening his own business. It should be celebrated properly. Their conversation was interrupted by Jasmine, who'd been scrolling on Angela's tablet. Mom, did you know George Strait is playing at the AT&T Center next month? Angela's eyes widened. George Strait? Daniel? Didn't you say Jake loves George Strait? Obsessed with him. Always playing his music in the garage. A thought began forming in Angela's mind. A crazy thought that seemed impossible but also somehow perfect. She picked up her phone and started typing. Meanwhile, across town in a small house filled with the smell of homemade tamales, Melissa Rodriguez was having dinner with her son, Vincent, and her mother, Graciela. Mama is making tamales for Mr. Jake's opening on Saturday, Vincent said in English, then repeated in Spanish for his grandmother's benefit. Graciela nodded approvingly and responded in rapid Spanish. Melissa translated, Abuela says any man who helps strangers deserves to be honored. She's making 3 dozen tamales. Mom, you don't have to do that, Melissa said. Si, I do, Graciela insisted, switching to English. In my village in Mexico, when someone does good, the village honors them. Here, we do the same. Vincent leaned back in his chair, thinking. He was a senior at Roosevelt High School, vice president of the student council, and had connections throughout the school. You know what? I'm going to see if the mariachi club wants to play at his opening. We've been looking for community events to perform at. Melissa looked at her son with pride. That's a wonderful idea, mijo. These threads, invisible to Jake, unknown and unplanned, were weaving together. A community recognizing one of its own, preparing to celebrate a man who'd never sought celebration but had earned it through countless small acts of decency. Friday morning, Jake woke to a text from Rebecca. Lily says she'll come. Be there around 1 p.m. Jake read the message 3 times, a smile spreading across his face. His daughter was coming. That alone made everything worth it. He spent Friday doing final preparations, cleaning every surface until it gleamed, arranging and rearranging the folding chairs, testing and retesting the coffee maker. Raymond stopped by with his wife, Kim, and helped Jake hang a banner that read, Grand Opening, Morrison's Auto Repair, across the front of the garage. Big day tomorrow, Raymond said, stepping back to admire their work. Yeah, Jake agreed, feeling nervous excitement building. Big day. That evening, Jake allowed himself a rare indulgence. He stopped by a liquor store and bought a nice bottle of bourbon, not for getting drunk, just for a single glass to toast his achievement. Back in his apartment, he poured 2 fingers into a glass and raised it toward the photo of Lily on the wall. Here's to new beginnings, he said softly, then took a sip. The bourbon burned pleasantly on the way down. Outside, the San Antonio night was alive with the sounds of the city. Traffic, music, voices, life continuing in its messy, beautiful way. Tomorrow, Jake's new life would officially begin. Tomorrow, his daughter would see what he'd built. Tomorrow, a small group of people would gather to support him. What Jake didn't know, what he couldn't possibly know, was that tomorrow would become one of the most significant days of his life. That the small gathering he'd planned had grown into something much larger, that even now, final pieces were falling into place for something extraordinary. In a recording studio in Nashville, Tennessee, George Strait's manager, Tom Henderson, was scrolling through his emails when he came across a message that had been forwarded multiple times. The subject line read, Please read, Veteran's Story in San Antonio, Tom almost deleted it. He got hundreds of these kinds of messages a week. People wanting George's attention, presents, or money. But something made him open it. Inside was a long email that had clearly been forwarded many times, each person adding their own message. The original email had been written by Angela Tucker, Daniel's wife. She'd sent it to her local VFW post, explaining Jake's story. The veteran who'd lost his leg in Afghanistan, who'd struggled with PTSD and divorce, who'd helped countless people in his community while asking for nothing in return, and who was opening his own garage on Saturday as a testament to his resilience and determination. Angela had mentioned Jake's love of George Strait music, how it had been a constant comfort during his darkest times. The VFW commander had forwarded it to the regional coordinator. The regional coordinator had forwarded it to a friend who worked in veteran advocacy. That person had a cousin who'd once done marketing work for a Nashville label. And somehow, improbably, it had made its way to Tom Henderson's inbox. Tom read the email twice, then read the attached documents, photos of Jake at various charity events, taken by others, never selfies, testimonials from people he'd helped, a news article from 3 years ago about a local veteran doing automotive work for struggling families at reduced rates. Tom had been managing George Strait for over 20 years. He knew his client better than almost anyone. And he knew that George, despite his massive fame and legendary status, had never forgotten his own humble beginnings. George had a particular soft spot for veterans and for people who helped others quietly, without seeking recognition. Tom checked his watch. It was 8:30 p.m. Central Time. George was probably at home in Texas. He'd finished his last show of the winter tour the previous week and was on a break before the spring dates began. Tom picked up his phone and dialed. "Hey, Tom, what's going on?" George's distinctive voice answered. "George, I know you're on break, and I apologize for bothering you, but I just got an email I think you should see. It's about a veteran in San Antonio." As Tom explained the situation, reading portions of the email chain, there was silence on the other end of the line. When he finished, George was quiet for a long moment. "When's this opening?" George finally asked. "Tomorrow afternoon. Saturday, February 7th. Another pause. "What's my schedule look like tomorrow?" Tom pulled up his calendar. "You're clear. Nothing until the Nashville meeting on Tuesday. How far is San Antonio from the ranch?" "About 4 hours by car, 40 minutes by helicopter." George was quiet again, thinking. Tom had learned not to push during these silences. George Strait made decisions deliberately, carefully. "Send me that email chain," George said finally. "And Tom, keep your phone on. I might need you to make some calls." After hanging up, George Strait sat in his home office, reading the emails about Jake Morrison on his computer. The photos showed a lean man with kind eyes and a prosthetic leg, always helping others, changing tires, working under hoods, standing with families at community events. George had performed for millions of people over his 4-decade career. He'd played stadiums, won awards, sold records that went platinum many times over. But he'd also never forgotten what it meant to struggle, to work hard, to build something from nothing. His father had been a junior high school math teacher and a rancher. George had grown up understanding the value of hard work and humility. He picked up his phone and made a call. "Hey, Charlie, it's George. I need the helicopter ready tomorrow morning, early. We're making a trip to San Antonio." Saturday morning broke clear and bright over San Antonio, the kind of perfect February day that seemed ordered specifically for outdoor celebrations. Jake woke at 5 a.m., too excited and nervous to sleep longer. He went through his morning routine on autopilot. Shower, dress in clean jeans and a fresh Morrison's Auto Repair t-shirt he'd had printed. Make coffee that was too strong and toast that he barely tasted. By 6:15, he was at the garage, turning on lights and setting up. Hank Patterson arrived at 6:30, true to his word, with his wife Barbara carrying a slow cooker filled with her famous queso dip. "Thought folks might want something savory to go with all those donuts," Barbara explained, setting up the slow cooker on a folding table Jake had set up near the office. "Barbara, you didn't have to—" "Stop saying that," Hank interrupted gruffly, but his eyes were warm. "People want to contribute, Jake. Let them. It makes them happy." By 7, Melissa arrived with the donuts. Not 6 dozen, but 9 dozen. "A few extra donors heard what I was doing and wanted to chip in," she explained with a conspiratorial smile. At 7:30, Raymond and Kim showed up with a large coffee urn and several gallons of sweet tea. "Texas tradition," Raymond announced. "Can't have a celebration without sweet tea." Jake was starting to feel overwhelmed in the best possible way. The quiet opening he'd envisioned was clearly not happening. People kept arriving. Some he knew, some he didn't. Antonio Gutierrez came with his entire extended family. At least 20 people. Patricia Whitaker arrived with her husband Carl, who immediately started examining Jake's equipment and asking knowledgeable questions about the diagnostic computer system. By 9 a.m., the garage and the sidewalk outside were filling with people. Jake estimated at least 75 were already there, with more arriving by the minute. Someone had brought a speaker system and was playing music. Country music, naturally, with George Strait featuring prominently in the rotation. Vincent Rodriguez arrived with 12 members of Roosevelt High School's mariachi band, all dressed in traditional charro outfits. They set up near the street and began playing, adding a festive atmosphere that drew even more people. Jake Morrison!" A woman in her 30s approached, holding a microphone with a local TV station logo on it. Behind her, a cameraman was filming. "I'm Jennifer Walsh from KSAT 12 News. We heard about your opening and wanted to do a story about local veteran-owned businesses. Do you have a few minutes?" Jake's mouth went dry. Sure, I guess." The interview was brief but intense. Jennifer asked about his military service, his injury, his journey to opening the garage. Jake answered honestly but uncomfortably, not used to being the center of attention. When she asked what drove him to help so many people in the community, he struggled to find words. I know what it's like to need help. And I figure if I can make someone's day a little easier, why wouldn't I?" The simplicity and sincerity of his answer clearly moved Jennifer. "That's beautiful. Thank you for your service, and congratulations on your opening." As the morning progressed, the crowd continued to grow. Daniel Tucker's estimate had been conservative. By 10:30, Jake counted over 150 people. The entire block had transformed into a street festival. Graciela Rodriguez had indeed made tamales, which she was serving from a table while telling anyone who would listen, in a mixture of Spanish and English, about El Hombre Bueno, the good man who'd helped her grandson. Jake moved through the crowd in a daze, shaking hands, accepting congratulations, trying to thank everyone. People kept telling him stories he barely remembered. A time he'd helped jumpstart a car in a parking lot. A time he'd given someone directions when they were lost. A time he'd carried groceries for an elderly woman. Small moments he'd never thought twice about, now being reflected back to him as significant acts of kindness. At 11 a.m., Jake stood on a step stool someone had brought and attempted to give a speech. His voice was rough with emotion. "I don't really know what to say. I thought this was going to be me. Maybe a dozen folks, and some coffee. This," he gestured at the crowd, "this is unbelievable. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for supporting me. This garage represents a dream I've been working towards since I came home from Afghanistan. But looking out at all of you, I realized the real achievement isn't the building or the business. It's the community I somehow became part of without realizing it. So thank you. From the bottom of my heart, thank you." The crowd erupted in applause and cheers. Jake stepped down, blinking back tears, and was immediately enveloped in hugs from Hank, Barbara, Daniel, Angela, and countless others. At 11:45, a black SUV pulled up to the crowded street, maneuvering carefully through the throng of people. Jake was inside the garage, showing a group of young mechanics his tool organization system, when he heard a commotion outside. Voices rising in excitement, people beginning to shout. He limped outside to see what was happening. The crowd had parted, creating a path from the black SUV to the garage entrance. Jake's heart was pounding. Had something happened? Was someone hurt? The SUV's rear door opened, and a man stepped out wearing a white cowboy hat, pressed jeans, and a button-down shirt. The man was in his 70s, but carried himself with the easy confidence of someone comfortable in his own skin. Jake's brain short-circuited. It wasn't possible. It couldn't be. George Strait stood on Roosevelt Avenue, smiling at the shocked, silent crowd. Then the silence broke into absolute pandemonium. Screaming, crying, people pulling out phones. The mariachi band scrambling to figure out what to play. George walked directly toward Jake, who stood frozen in complete disbelief. When George reached him, he extended his hand. "Jake Morrison, I'm George Strait. I heard you were opening a garage today, and I thought I'd stop by and see if you needed any help." Jake shook the offered hand mechanically, unable to form words. His mind was a white noise of shock. This wasn't real. This couldn't be happening. I don't, Jake stammered. George smiled. The same warm smile Jake had seen in countless photos and videos. "I know I should have called ahead, but I wanted it to be a surprise. From what I hear, you're the kind of guy who doesn't like a lot of fuss. Probably would have told me not to come if I'd asked." Yes, no. I mean," Jake took a breath, trying to organize his thoughts. "Mr. Strait, I can't believe you're here. Just George, please. And I'm honored to be here, Jake. I heard about what you've been through, what you've overcome, and how you've helped people in this community. That deserves recognition." Jake became aware that hundreds of people were watching this interaction, that phones were recording, that his heroes, his actual hero, the person whose music had been the soundtrack to his entire life, was standing in front of his garage. The surreal nature of it made him wonder if he'd fallen and hit his head. "Your music," Jake started, then had to stop. His voice was too thick. "Your music got me through Afghanistan, through the hospital, through everything. I don't know how to thank you for that." George's expression softened. "You already have, Jake. By keeping going. By building this." He gestured at the garage. "By helping others. That's all the thanks anyone could ask for." Behind George, more people were emerging from the SUV. His manager, Tom, a couple of band members who'd come along for the ride, and a local radio DJ who'd apparently been brought in to help with the surprise. Jennifer Walsh and her cameraman were frantically filming everything. The mariachi band, after a hurried conference, launched into a mariachi version of Amarillo by Morning, which was both incongruous and somehow perfect. "So," George said, looking around at the crowd, at the decorations, at the garage behind Jake, "this is quite a turnout for a quiet opening." Jake laughed, a slightly hysterical sound. "Yeah, it got a little out of hand. Best kind of out of hand." George turned to address the crowd, his voice carrying easily even without a microphone, the result of decades of performance. "Folks, can I have your attention? Thank you all for being here to support Jake Morrison. I've been doing this music thing for a while now, and I've met a lot of people. But when I heard about Jake, about his service to our country, about how he lost his leg protecting our freedom, and about how he came home and instead of feeling sorry for himself, he started helping others, I knew I had to come meet him myself. The crowd erupted in applause. George waited for it to die down before continuing. Now, I know Jake here is a fan of my music, and I figure if my songs helped him even a little bit during the hard times, well, that's what music is for. So Jake, if it's all right with you, I brought my guitar, and I thought maybe I could play a few songs for you and your friends here. What do you say? Jake could only nod, completely overwhelmed. This wasn't happening. This was a dream, or a hallucination, or some kind of elaborate prank. But it was happening. Someone brought a chair from inside the garage. George retrieved his acoustic guitar from the SUV. The crowd pressed closer, but respectfully, maintaining a semicircle around the impromptu performance space. George Strait settled into the chair, adjusted his guitar, and looked at Jake. "Any requests?" "Amarillo by Morning," Jake said immediately. It was the song that meant the most to him, the song that had played during his darkest nights. George smiled. Good choice. And then, on Roosevelt Avenue in San Antonio, Texas, on a perfect February Saturday, George Strait began to play for an audience of over 200 people who'd gathered to celebrate a humble mechanic's new beginning. His voice was unmistakable, unchanged by time, carrying the same authenticity and emotion that had made him a legend. Amarillo by Morning, up from San Antone. Everything that I got is just what I've got on. When that sun is high in that Texas sky, I'll be bucking at the county fair. Amarillo by Morning. Amarillo. I'll be there. Jake stood transfixed, tears streaming down his face without shame. Around him, the crowd was equally moved, some crying, some singing along softly, all captured by the magic of the moment. This was more than a celebrity appearance. This was recognition, validation, a moment of pure grace that Jake Morrison had never expected and certainly never sought. George played for 45 minutes, running through his greatest hits. All My Exes Live in Texas. The Chair. Check Yes or No. I Cross My Heart. Between songs, he told stories, joked with the crowd, and repeatedly praised Jake's character and service. When he finished, the applause was deafening. George stood, shook Jake's hand again, and then pulled him into a hug. Thank you for your service, Jake. And thank you for being the kind of person this world needs more of. Thank you for coming, Jake managed to say. I'll never forget this. That's the idea, George said with a wink. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur. George stayed for another hour, taking photos with everyone who wanted one, signing autographs, eating tamales, and praising Graciella's cooking in his limited but enthusiastic Spanish. He toured the garage, asked intelligent questions about Jake's equipment, and genuinely seemed interested in the business. At one point, Jake found himself standing next to his daughter, Lily, who had arrived during George's performance. She was staring at him with an expression he hadn't seen in years. Awe and pride. Dad, she said softly, George Strait came to your opening? George Strait. I know, honey. I still can't believe it. Everyone's talking about how you helped them. I didn't know you did all that. Jake shrugged, uncomfortable. It wasn't anything special. Dad, it was. It is. Lily's eyes were shining. I'm really proud of you. Those 5 words, I'm really proud of you, meant more to Jake than anything else that day. More than George Strait's appearance, more than the crowd, more than the media coverage. His daughter was proud of him. He pulled her into a hug, and for the first time in years, she didn't pull away quickly. She held on, and Jake felt a crack in the wall that had grown between them. The Sunday after the grand opening, Jake woke to discover his life had fundamentally changed. The local news had run the story of George Strait's surprise appearance, and it had gone viral. By Sunday afternoon, the video of George playing Amarillo by Morning at Morrison's Auto Repair had been viewed over 3 million times on social media. Jake's phone hadn't stopped ringing. News outlets wanted interviews. Strangers were calling to book appointments at his garage. Someone from the mayor's office had left a message about a potential commendation. It was overwhelming in a way that made Jake want to retreat into himself. But he forced himself to stay present, to engage, to not disappear. Monday morning, when Jake opened the garage for his first official week of business, there were already 5 cars waiting in the parking lot. By noon, he'd booked appointments for the next 3 weeks, solid. The phone kept ringing with more requests. Daniel Tucker stopped by during lunch, bringing sandwiches from a local deli. They sat in the office, eating and processing the surreal events of Saturday. "Man, I can't believe George Strait actually showed up," Daniel said, shaking his head. "Angela's been watching that video on repeat. She's the one who started the whole thing, you know." "What do you mean?" Daniel explained about Angela's email campaign, how it had spread through various networks until somehow reaching George's manager. "She just wanted to do something special for you. Never thought it would actually work." Jake was quiet for a moment, absorbing this information. "Tell Angela thank you. And thank you too, Danny, for everything. That's what friends do, Jake." The word hung in the air. Friends. Jake realized that's what these people were. Not just customers or acquaintances, but actual friends. He'd been so focused on survival, on just getting through each day, that he hadn't recognized the community forming around him. That evening, Jake had dinner with Lily. Her idea, which shocked and delighted him. They went to a Mexican restaurant near her school, and for the first time in years, conversation flowed naturally. Lily talked about her classes, her friends, her stress about college applications. Jake listened, really listened, asking questions and offering support without trying to fix everything. "Mom says I should consider Texas A&M, Lily mentioned. "It's got a good veterinary program." "You want to be a vet?" Jake asked, surprised. He hadn't known this. "Yeah. I love animals. Always have." She paused. "You probably didn't know that." "I didn't. But I'd like to know more. Tell me about it." So she did, and Jake learned about his daughter's passion for animal welfare, her volunteer work at a local shelter, her dream of opening her own veterinary clinic someday. He realized how much he'd missed, how much distance had grown between them. But he also realized that distance could be closed, one conversation at a time. "I'm sorry I wasn't around more," Jake said as they finished their meal. "After I came back from Afghanistan, I wasn't myself. I wasn't a good dad." "You were hurt, Dad. I understand that now. I didn't when I was younger, but I do now. Still, I should have tried harder. I let the pain and the guilt consume me, and I pushed everyone away, including you." Lily reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "You're trying now. That's what matters." Over the following weeks, Jake settled into a rhythm. The garage thrived, more business than he could handle alone, which led to him hiring Brandon Cole, the young veteran he'd mentored as his first employee. Brandon was eager, skilled, and understood Jake's vision of honest quality work at fair prices. The media attention gradually faded, but the impact remained. Morrison's Auto Repair became known not just for good service, but for the story behind it. The veteran who'd overcome adversity, the man who'd helped his community, the surprise visit from a country music legend. Jake started attending physical therapy again, something he'd let lapse. He joined a veterans support group that met weekly at the VFW Hall. He accepted an invitation to speak at Roosevelt High School's Career Day. where Vincent Rodriguez introduced him to an auditorium full of students as a real American hero. "I'm not a hero," Jake told the students. "Heroes are the guys who didn't come home. I'm just someone who's trying to build a good life and help people along the way. That's something any of you can do." His relationship with Lily continued to improve. They started having dinner every Tuesday, a standing appointment that Jake never missed. She showed him pictures of the animals she worked with at the shelter. He taught her basic car maintenance, how to check oil, change a tire, jumpstart a battery. "This is useful stuff," Lily said one Saturday afternoon, as Jake guided her through changing the oil in Rebecca's car. "Why don't they teach this in school?" "Good question. Maybe you can help change that someday." One evening in late March, 6 weeks after the opening, Jake received an unexpected phone call from Tom Henderson, George Strait's manager. "Jake, hi. This is Tom Henderson. We met briefly at your garage opening." "Of course." "Hi, Tom. What can I do for you?" "Actually, I'm calling about something we'd like to do for you. George was really moved by your story and by meeting you. He'd like to invite you to be his guest at his concert at the AT&T Center next month. Front row seats, backstage passes, the whole experience. And he'd like you to bring some friends. We've got 20 tickets for you to distribute however you'd like." Jake was speechless for a moment. Wow. That's incredibly generous. You made an impression, Jake. George doesn't do this kind of thing often, but when he does, it's because he genuinely wants to. So, what do you say? Absolutely. Yes. Thank you. After hanging up, Jake immediately started thinking about who to invite. Lily, obviously. Daniel and Angela and their kids. Hank and Barbara. Patricia Whitaker. Melissa Rodriguez, and Vincent. The list grew quickly. People who'd supported him, who'd helped make the garage opening special, who'd become his community. The night of the concert arrived in late April. Jake had bought a new shirt for the occasion, a nice pearl snap Western shirt that Lily had helped him pick out. The group arrived at the AT&T Center together, a diverse collection of people united by their connection to Jake. Lily was beside herself with excitement. "Dad, we're going to meet George Strait. Actually meet him." "Looks like it," Jake said, grinning at her enthusiasm. The concert was spectacular. George Strait at 73 was still in top form, his voice strong, his stage presence commanding. But the highlight came during the encore when George paused before his final song. "Before we finish tonight, I want to tell you folks about someone special in the audience," George said, and Jake's stomach dropped. "A few weeks back, I had the privilege of attending the grand opening of Morrison's Auto Repair here in San Antonio. The owner, Jake Morrison, is a Marine Corps veteran who lost his leg serving our country in Afghanistan. He came home, struggled like many veterans do, but instead of giving up, he built a business and a life based on helping others. Jake, you here tonight?" A spotlight found Jake in the front row. He stood awkwardly, waving as the arena erupted in applause. He could feel 20,000 pairs of eyes on him, and it was terrifying and amazing simultaneously. "Jake, I want you to know that your story inspired me and a lot of other people. You represent the best of what it means to serve, to persevere, and to care about your community. This last song is for you. It's called I Cross My Heart." As George played, Jake held Lily's hand on one side and felt the presence of his friends around him. The song was about commitment, about promises kept, about love enduring through challenges. And Jake realized that's what he'd been doing all along, keeping faith with the promise he'd made to himself to survive, to build something meaningful, to not let his injuries define him. After the concert, Tom Henderson escorted Jake's group backstage. The meet and greet was casual and warm. George spent nearly an hour with them, talking, joking, taking photos. He pulled Jake aside at one point for a private conversation. "How's business?" George asked. "Better than I ever imagined. Steady work, good reputation. I even hired my first employee." "That's great, Jake. Really great." George paused. "You know, when I heard your story, it reminded me why I do this. Music isn't just entertainment. It's connection. It's comfort during hard times. The fact that my songs helped you through your darkest days, that means more to me than any award or chart position." "Your music saved my life," Jake said simply. "I mean that literally. There were nights in the hospital when I didn't want to keep going, but I'd put on Amarillo by Morning or Troubadour. And something in those songs reminded me that life was worth living." George's eyes were bright with emotion. "Thank you for telling me that. And thank you for living a life that honors that choice to keep going. You're making a difference, Jake. Don't ever doubt that." On the drive home, Lily fell asleep with her head on Jake's shoulder. Daniel and Angela were in the back seat, also quiet, processing the incredible evening. Jake drove carefully through the San Antonio night, feeling a peace he hadn't experienced in years. His phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. "Lily just texted me about the concert. She's so happy. Thank you for being there for her, Jake. I'm really proud of what you've built." Jake smiled. The approval from his ex-wife, the reconnection with his daughter, the success of his business, the friendships he'd formed, these were the real rewards. George Strait's visit had been extraordinary, but it had also revealed something Jake was only now understanding. He'd never been as alone or as invisible as he'd believed. He'd been building something all along, not just a business, but a life, a community, a network of connection and care. 15 months after the grand opening, in May of the following year, Jake Morrison stood in his garage on a quiet Thursday afternoon, training his second new employee. Business had grown to the point where he needed 3 full-time mechanics plus himself. Brandon Cole had become his right-hand man, practically managing the shop's day-to-day operations. The new employee, Christina Vasquez, was a recent graduate of the local technical college, eager and talented. "The key is to always explain to customers what you're doing and why," Jake was telling Christina. "They're trusting us with their vehicles and their money. We honor that trust through transparency." The garage had expanded too. Jake had negotiated with his landlord to lease the adjacent vacant space, doubling his square footage. He'd added 2 more lifts, expanded the waiting area, and created a small classroom where he taught free basic auto maintenance classes to the community every Saturday morning. The classes had been Lily's idea. She'd suggested that teaching people to do simple maintenance themselves would not only help them save money, but would also build trust in the business. She'd been right. The Saturday classes were always full, and many attendees became regular customers for more complex work. Lily was 19 now, finishing her freshman year at Texas A&M, studying pre-veterinary medicine. She came home most weekends, and she and Jake had established a tradition of Sunday breakfast at a local diner where they'd catch up on the week. Jake's phone rang, a call from Daniel Tucker. "Hey, Danny, what's up?" "Jake, you got a minute? I need to talk to you about something." "Sure. Come by the shop." 20 minutes later, Daniel arrived, looking nervous. Jake led him to the office, sensing something significant was coming. "So, you remember how I've been working for FedEx for 7 years?" Daniel began. "Of course. Well, I got offered a promotion, operations manager for the South Texas region. Big raise, better benefits, but here's the thing. It would mean a lot more hours, a lot more stress. And I've been thinking about what I really want to do with my life." Jake waited, letting Daniel work through his thoughts. "You've always talked about how working with your hands, fixing things, creating something tangible, how that's meaningful work. And I've been watching you build this place, build this team. And I think, Daniel took a breath, I think I want to learn the trade. Become a mechanic. Maybe not work for you, because I know you've got your team set. But somewhere, start over in something that feels more real. Jake was quiet for a moment, then smiled. Who says I don't have room for you? Brandon's been talking about eventually opening his own shop. He's almost ready. When he does, I'll need someone to step into that role. Could be you, if you're serious about learning. Daniel's face lit up. Seriously? You'd teach me? You helped me when I needed it. Time to return the favor. But Danny, be real with yourself. It's hard work. It's dirty. It doesn't pay as well as management. You sure about this? I've never been more sure of anything. Over the following months, Daniel became Jake's apprentice, learning the trade with the same dedication he'd brought to his FedEx career. Angela supported the decision completely, having watched her husband become increasingly unfulfilled in his corporate role. In August, Jake received an invitation to speak at a National Veterans Conference in Dallas. The organizers had heard about his story and wanted him to share his experience of reintegration and building a civilian career. Jake almost declined. Public speaking still made him uncomfortable. But Lily convinced him to accept. Dad, you have something important to say. Other veterans need to hear that it's possible to build something meaningful after service. You can help people. So Jake went to Dallas and gave a 20-minute speech to an audience of 300 veterans, advocates, and policymakers. He spoke honestly about his struggles with PTSD, his divorce, his feelings of worthlessness after losing his leg. But he also spoke about finding purpose through helping others, about the unexpected community that had formed around him, and about the importance of accepting help when it's offered. For years, I thought asking for help was weakness, Jake told the audience. I thought I had to do everything alone, prove that I was still capable despite my injury. But what I learned is that accepting help, building connections, letting people care about you, that's not weakness. That's wisdom. That's how we survive and eventually thrive. The speech received a standing ovation. Afterward, dozens of veterans approached Jake to thank him, to share their own stories, to ask for advice. He exchanged contact information with several, stayed in touch, became an informal mentor to those who reached out. In October, Morrison's Auto Repair celebrated its second anniversary with another community gathering, smaller than the famous opening, but no less meaningful. George Strait sent a congratulatory video message that Jake played for the crowd, and there wasn't a dry eye in the house when George said, "Jake, you took a chance on yourself, and look what you've built. Keep making us proud." That same month, Jake met someone. Her name was Nicole Campbell, a 38-year-old teacher at Roosevelt High School who'd brought her car in for a routine oil change. They'd started talking about the education program Jake ran on Saturdays, discovered a shared interest in community service, and Jake had nervously asked if she'd like to have coffee sometime. Their first date was casual and easy. Nicole had been divorced for 3 years, had no children, and worked as a special education teacher. She was patient, kind, and genuinely interested in Jake's story without treating him like a victim or a hero. Just a person. "So you really had George Strait show up at your opening?" she asked over coffee. "I know how crazy it sounds. I'm still not entirely sure it wasn't a very vivid hallucination." Nicole laughed. "That's the most San Antonio story I've ever heard. Random veteran opens a garage, helps people. Country music legend shows up. Nowhere else in the world would that happen." They started dating slowly, carefully. Jake was honest about his limitations, the nightmares that still occasionally woke him, the phantom pain in his missing leg, his struggles with crowds and loud noises. Nicole was understanding and never pushed. "We all have stuff," she said simply. "You're dealing with yours. That's more than a lot of people do. Lily approved of Nicole, which mattered enormously to Jake. The three of them had dinner together several times, and Jake watched with quiet joy as his daughter and his girlfriend bonded over their shared love of animals and their tendency to worry about him. "You need to eat better, Dad," Lily said during one dinner. "And actually take breaks," Nicole added. "I drove by your shop last Saturday at 8 p.m. and you were still there. I had paperwork. Hire a bookkeeper," they said in unison, then laughed. Jake threw up his hands in mock surrender. "I'm outnumbered." But he did hire a bookkeeper, Patricia Whitaker's daughter, who needed part-time work. And he did start taking better care of himself. He even started running again, something he hadn't done since before the injury. With his prosthetic leg, it was challenging, but he worked up to a slow jog of a mile, then 2 miles, then 3. In December, 2 years after the grand opening that had changed his life, Jake received a call from Tom Henderson again. "Jake, George is planning something for next spring I thought you should know about. He's doing a special one-time concert, a benefit for veteran services. He wants to know if Morrison's Auto Repair would be interested in being one of the featured beneficiaries. Proceeds would be split between several organizations, including direct grants to veteran-owned businesses." That's incredibly generous. "Of course, yes. There's one more thing. George would like you to say a few words at the event. Nothing long, just share your story. Talk about what the support has meant to you. Would you be comfortable with that?" Jake thought about the Jake Morrison from 2 years ago, isolated, ashamed, barely surviving. That Jake would have said no. But the Jake Morrison of today, surrounded by community, building a life of meaning, reconnected with his daughter and finding new love, this Jake could say yes. "I'd be honored." The benefit concert was held in April at the Majestic Theater in San Antonio, a beautiful historic venue. George Strait performed an intimate acoustic set, and the evening raised over $500,000 for veteran causes. When Jake spoke, standing at a podium with his prosthetic leg visible in his dress pants, he told his story with honesty and hope. 2 years ago, I thought my life was small. I thought I'd lost everything that mattered. But what I learned is that when we help others, when we build community, when we open ourselves to connection, life becomes bigger than we ever imagined. The support I've received has allowed me to not just survive, but to thrive. And now I get to help others do the same. That's the gift. That's the purpose. And I'm grateful every single day. After the event, as Jake stood with Lily, Nicole, Daniel, Angela, Hank, Barbara, and so many others who'd become his family, he felt complete in a way he'd never experienced before. The garage, the business, even George Strait's incredible support. These were all meaningful. But the real transformation had been internal. He'd learned to accept help, to be vulnerable, to believe he was worthy of care and celebration. "Dad, I'm so proud of you," Lily said, hugging him tightly. "I'm proud of me too, kiddo," Jake replied, and he meant it. As they walked out of the theater into the warm San Antonio night, Nicole took Jake's hand. "What are you thinking about?" Jake looked up at the stars visible above the city lights. "I'm thinking about second chances, how life can surprise you, how one moment, one decision to keep going, to open that garage, to let people in, how it can change everything. Any regrets?" Jake thought about the question seriously. The injury, the divorce, the years of struggle, they'd been painful, but they'd also led him here, to this moment, to these people, to this life. "No regrets," he said finally. It was all part of the journey. They walked together into the future, a future Jake Morrison had built one day, one choice, one act of kindness at a time. The quiet mechanic, who'd wanted nothing more than a modest opening, had discovered something far more valuable. That when we open our hearts and our lives to community, when we help others and allow ourselves to be helped, when we keep going even when it's hard, that's when life becomes truly extraordinary. In his truck, driving home, Jake turned on the radio. George Strait's voice filled the cab, singing, "The Cowboy Rides Away." But Jake wasn't riding away. He was riding toward connection, toward purpose, toward a life more meaningful than he'd ever imagined possible. It was supposed to be a quiet opening. But George Strait had transformed it into an unforgettable spectacle. And in doing so, he'd helped reveal a truth Jake was finally ready to accept. His life had always been extraordinary. He'd just needed the right moment, the right people, and the right perspective to see it. The stars shone over San Antonio, over Morrison's auto repair, over the community that had embraced a wounded veteran and helped him heal. And Jake Morrison, father, friend, mechanic, and survivor, drove through the night with gratitude in his heart and hope for tomorrow.